Alright you guys, I am back with another home review, and today we are looking at Architectural Digest's little deep dive into Emma Chamberlain's home. I wanted this video to be a little bit more educational and actually break down the design style and why certain pieces work with one another. So I've actually gone ahead and watched the video first, and I'm going to be pulling out some of my favorite pieces and explaining to you why I love it and also why it all works together.
Hi AD, I'm Emma Chamberlain and welcome to my house.
So the first thing that I absolutely love about this home is that it seems really warm and really inviting. Now this is a 1950s ranch style home. Typically you'd see these homes as usually like a single level, but in this case it's actually double story, and you can tell by the large windows, the pitched roof, the eaves, a lot of timber accents, so around like the trim works and all that sort of thing. Australia doesn't have too many of these. We do have something very similar that's more so from the 60s or 70s, which is usually split level and has very similar sort of architectural pieces, and I've always quite liked it because it's got a bit of a nostalgic sense for myself. Upon entry, the thing that I really like about this space is that obviously you've got those beautiful warm beams, but then you're instantly in a space that has a little bit of color, but not too much, and it all rolls together. The main thing that I love about this particular living room is that instantly once you walk into it, you can see some really gorgeous pieces of art, which in all honesty are very much so my style. They're almost impressionistic to some degree, and it's not too detailed, but you can see that the colors in those paintings, particularly the ones from her father, are actually echoed throughout the space. So you definitely see this with the lounge chair and the fireplace. It's got this beautiful soft green hues that all play together really, really nicely with some of the pieces that he's created. And by doing this, it has a little bit of repetition. It doesn't necessarily mean it's all exactly the same color, but it's all in the same sort of color family. So you spot it in each piece and you go, oh, this all feels similar, this all feels the same, and that's why it feels quite cohesive. The other thing that I absolutely adore about this particular living room is the timber frame glazing and how it goes all the way up onto the ceiling. This isn't typically something you'd see in this style of home, particularly in her area, which is in California. Even here in Australia, our summers get extremely hot and our winters, depending where you are, can get cold, but here in Melbourne it does. And perhaps here in Melbourne it would work, but I can imagine that particular space and that particular setting would get very, very hot, and you wouldn't really be able to escape it except for having really strong air conditioning and coolers. But it looks so beautiful, and it brings in a lot of really lovely natural light, and the nook that it creates and how they've highlighted it with the wallpaper pattern really just defines it as an additional space that she can use, and the green obviously ties in with the rest of the space. In all honesty, the only thing that I don't particularly like about this space is just the way that the books have been laid. I feel like there could have been a different sort of storage solution to be used. However, I do kind of like it because it is quite different to the way that you would typically store books. For me, it just feels a little bit cluttered, but she definitely has a very eclectic style. I really like the fact that she utilizes a lot of timbers, not only in the architecture but also in some of the timber furniture pieces as well, which is really fun. In all honesty, this kitchen is my heaven. I absolutely love the color palette. I love the fact that we've obviously got that repetition from that living space where we've got the skylights in a very similar fashion, and I just love how it's just filled with so much sunlight. I also like how they've utilized repetition in terms of the colors and also in terms of the vertical lines. So color wise, they've definitely looked at the marble and said, oh, this is going to be our inspiration for the rest of the space, which she does mention. And from that piece, they've gone ahead and said, okay, well, this piece of marble has green, gold, white, and a few other different hues. Let's go ahead and use this as like our basis for the rest of the space. So she has these beautiful off-white vertical tiles as her splashback. She's got these beautiful cabinetry that also has some vertical lines as well, but in this really lovely soft mint green, which is almost a neutral, which means that this space is going to be a little bit more timeless than those really bold pops of color. The other thing that I quite like is that they've mixed some metals. So they've got the copper for anything that's pretty much above the bench, and then they've got almost like a stainless steel look below the bench. Sometimes people don't like mixing metals, but I think it really works in this space because if they used copper throughout the entire space, it was probably going to be too much. And the stainless steel just adds like a sleekness and really ties in with all of the rest of the appliances. And I'm not a huge fan of the counter where she eats breakfast. The only reason for this is because of those types of tiles. It's going to be really hard to clean, in my opinion. They look gorgeous. I love them when they're facing like that. However, when it's like this, it is going to be a bit odd to put your plate on. Like, it's not going to have a flat surface, especially if you've got like a mug that may not have a really good base. It might roll off and fall away, which not ideal. The reflectivity off of it looks really, really nice. Practicality wise, not a huge fan of that, but that's probably one of the only things that I don't like about this particular space. Let's jump into the main bathroom. This is probably coming just off from her master bedroom, so this might be the master bath. And I love the fact that they've most likely kept the original layout. As she mentions, the bathtub is actually original to the home, which is awesome. It's great that they've been able to keep it and also make it feel as though it's been there forever. I think they've really played with a lot of these really strong natural elements. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of that red sort of marble look. However, I think it really works in this space because it really complements the other marble, that honeycomb looking marble. It provides a really warm palette that is seen throughout the rest of this house, but probably not to the same extremity. So in this particular room, it's quite strong, which I don't mind. I actually really quite like it. I'm personally someone that uses a lot of color, and I think using natural elements to create that has really worked in her favor. I love the checkers or the squared tiles. Do I think that might age really quickly? Potentially, yes, but with the rest of her space being very 1950s inspired and having an eclectic feel, I think it really works. And for her style and vibe, I don't think it's going to age for her, and she's going to be really comfortable in that space. I also really like the lighting. You could have gone with something that was probably a little bit more modern, a little bit more contemporary, but she's really lent into that, like maybe not going with what everyone else is going with currently, because currently we've got a lot of like backlighting happening, which I am 100% here for, whereas she hasn't done that, which is very interesting. Typically I don't usually talk about the outside, but I felt like this particular exterior has done a really great way of just having pops of personality that are of herself without it feeling extremely overwhelming, and you almost have to look for it. The ways that I quite like that she's done this, or her and her team have done this, is that she's gone ahead and chosen one color going along with the rest of the neutrals and kind of rolled with it as that pop of color. And that pop of color is kind of yellowy green. With the beds next to the pool, you can see that the beds are all nice, like off-white sort of color. And then you've got those really cool corn on the cob sort of style side tables, which are really unique and really bold. However, they don't seem all that bold in this space because it just looks like a pop of color, especially from afar. And then only when you get closer to it, then you go, oh, is that a corn? It's corn! It's not overpowering. It's just a little bit playful, and I really, really enjoy it. And I love the fact that these corns actually speak nicely with the dining set as well. It's got that checker pattern, which we've seen a little bit throughout the bathroom, but it's a little bit different, and it's kind of a bit more of a yellowy green, which she obviously kind of likes. She definitely loves her greens. She's got a little pops of yellows here and there, and it's almost like she's married the two together and went, yeah, just a hint of it. She's got this really awesome Terrazzo beer pong table, which, look, you could easily have gotten just like the stereotypical fold-out ones that just don't look great and just hidden it away for AD. But she's actually gone ahead and made this like almost like a feature piece, and I think that's really great, particularly for her age, which is practically my own age. It's just highlighting where she's at the moment, what she's currently doing party-wise with her own home, and she, instead of her shying away from it and being like, oh yeah, I do that, she's kind of leant right into it and went, yeah, I do that. And look, I might hate it later on, but for the time being, this is what works for me. I think that the way that she has explained this room as like being on a boat, I feel like this is kind of stepping away from almost that expectation that everything needs to feel like a spa day, and instead she's actually lent into something completely different and was inspired by something completely different, and so has created something quite unique and quite different. The only thing that I've seen in this particular space that I didn't like was the fact that the grouting on the tile in the background looks slightly different, and I do not know why. And I'm not sure if that's intentional or not, but it bothers me because everything else is not that way. And possibly the lighting. I would have preferred something that maybe had a bit of brass, a bit of maybe even stainless steel. Stainless steel would probably actually look great in that sense, but I digress. That's just me being picky. Again, we're working with a lot of vertical lines, which is really cool. Like, obviously she's got the curved space in the shower, which really breaks up all of this verticalness and this expectation of like almost boxiness, which is then also reflected with the sink that's in the center of the room. But we've got the vertical lines going with the tiles and also with the timber paneling as well. And that timber paneling is very reflective of the interior of the house. Like, it looks very similar. And, you know, I'm really glad she's lent into this like warmer orange timber, because these days it's either you go really light and white or you go black Japan or dark walnut, and that's pretty much it. We've really steered away from mahogany, we've steered away from these more orange tone timbers, whereas she's actually lent right into it, which I think is really unique for the current climate in design, but then also really reflective of this 1950s sort of style home that she's working with. And also honoring as well, which is the other thing I absolutely adore. She's actually really honoring the home as to how it was originally by really implementing all these different architectural pieces that may not necessarily have been there originally, but are very reflective of the home at that time. I also am in love with the flooring. I love the fact that she continued it from the outside in. It just has this consistent flow of the space, and it kind of reminds me of going to like, you know, those like hot springs and going to the spas, and you know, you've almost got that exact same tile just everywhere throughout the space, whether that be in the bathrooms or whether that be out actually next to the pools, because you could have easily have just gone with normal tile. But I think with so much structure in the space, having something that was a little bit more free flowing and a little bit more natural feeling really breaks up all of these like vertical lines that we're seeing. I think personally, this one is really up there with the Troye Sivan one that I did recently. I think this is really up my personal alley of having this eclectic vibe with a little bit of color, but maybe not too much color, and having that almost maximalist effect. And I think she really brings out the best parts of this house, both in a more architectural sense, but also a design sense as well. I think her and her team have done a fantastic job. There are a few things that I would be a little bit nitpicky about and want to change, but overall this space is gorgeous. They've really enhanced what the space was originally to what it is now, and really didn't like completely gut it and just modernized it. They really went ahead and started thinking about, okay, with this home, what would it have been like if it was made today? And how can we really reflect Emma as well? I don't know much about her, but after the end of this video, I felt like we were best friends. I really enjoyed this space, and I definitely think it's really up there with the Troye Sivan video I did recently, and honestly, I am so glad that I was able to do this and give you guys a little bit of an insight as to why this particular space worked and what I think could have been changed only slightly. If there are any other celebrities you would like me to go ahead and do a home review about, make sure you do leave a comment down below and leave that request there. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next video.